Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Jim Grisanzio from Oracle, and we're back here for some conversations about Jfokus 2021, and doing some interviews with some of the key speakers at the event. And I'm here tonight with Angle Rivera from the East Coast of the United States, which is actually where I grew up. So welcome, Angel. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, East Coast, the best coast, right?
Yeah, I was there for 30 years or so. So you're going to be talking at Jfokus 2021, so Matthias was the conference organizer, asked me to have some conversations with some of you guys, and so that's why we're here. I'm interested to hear your perspective on not only the session that you're doing, but also some thoughts about the community, the conference, and any kind of interesting trends you see taking place out there.
Sure.
So let's start off with your session. What are you talking about? Something about CICD pipelines.
Yeah, so my session for Jfokus is titled, Are Your CICD Pipelines Secure? And what I'm going to be talking about is kind of the general sense of security around CI/CD pipelines. And what I mean by that is, pipelines or CI/CD pipelines are basically automated processes that will, perform and execute tasks and your build processes, things like build process, compiling code, running automated test suites on your code. There's other things like packaging your application up into a form of release artifacts, right? Could be a Docker image, a jar file, right? A Java jar file, or whatever it is that you need to deploy your stack in. So again, the CI/CD pipeline is an automation tool, right? And it's designed to help developers speed up their software development, right? So if you're automating all these things, you're basically sending all these manual tasks you used to do to a system. It does it for you, and then you can basically wait for the results. So that feedback loop is really important. But in my talk, I'm going to be talking about how that all kind of integrates, and then also talking about how developers in today's software development ecosystem are more empowered to automate security actions, right? So when security back in the day, I'm going to go back in the day kind of analogy here, but back in the day when I started as a developer, I always wanted to write secure code. I always wanted to write bug-free code, right? I don't think any developer out there doesn't want to do that, but I didn't have the tooling, right, to do that. I didn't have the knowledge because we had assigned security teams, right? They usually didn't even sit in the same building in some of the organizations I worked with. Right. So, it was really difficult to kind of get a hold of them early on in the software development process and help, get and collaborate with them around security.
See, that seems really anti-intuitive to me. I mean, I'm not a developer, so I don't know all the details of how you guys actually do development. I mean, I've certainly observed a lot of developers over the years, but how can security be sitting in a separate room? I mean, metaphorically speaking, but I mean, right. Still, it's shouldn't that be everything woven together?
Yeah, and that's kind of where everything's going today, right? With all the DevOps, DevSecOps, right? That whole movement, that whole culture shift is actually designed to eliminate all those artificial barriers, right, between the roles, right? You have developers, operators, system admins, SREs now, I guess that's what they're called, and then right, security. There could be even compliance teams, right? All these teams kind of like do their own thing, and these DevOps, DevSecOps, right, concepts or movements are designed to knock down all of those artificial barriers so that these teams can now collaborate a lot smoother, right, and communicate better, so that we can address the fact that, hey, why is the security team, the last people to kind of touch the code or
Right.
have some impact on those releases. Yeah, we're that the term shift left is what that means, is like, now with the automation, with the new security tools, right? And that's what I was saying earlier, was I didn't have the tools to do it. Now they're so easy to use and very accurate, right? And security over time in this space cybersecurity, all that stuff is making huge gains, especially in standardization. So now we have the tools as developers. We have, the ability to just kind of run scans for the security team, right, in automation. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in the talk. Is, you have maybe some open source Java dependencies, right? You're using some other SDK or something in your Java project, and maybe it's developed by some bad actor, but it's not known. And until, right, those vulnerabilities are discovered, these scan tools that we use in the automation, right, the CICD pipeline, can detect that and notify the developer, hey, this, and maybe it's not a bad actor, right? Maybe it's just an older version of that dependency just has vulnerabilities, right, that can be exploited, and not necessarily bad intentions, right? It's just over time, software gets old, and people can exploit things once they realize, like, oh wow, I can push a memory buffer overflow here, right? Or whatever. At the end of the day, we are always with open source as well. We're grabbing, like, again, Java dependencies or Java SDKs from everywhere, and we're integrating them into our software to make this stuff so we don't have to work harder, right? Anyway, so once we have that, and the tools can tell us right away, hey, you have an issue, right? And it even, some of the tools are really cool because they'll tell you have an issue. They'll give a severity to it, right? Like low, medium, high, based off of a CVE, which is the identifier for that vulnerability. And a lot of people have done research. Once it's in a database, there's people actually trying to figure out, how to mitigate these vulnerabilities. But more than likely, you have to update a dependency, right, to the next version, and that will eliminate that vulnerability.
Right.
But as a developer, if you do that, right, there are implications to that, right? There are consequences, because maybe that new version of that dependency could have breaking changes to your current software, right? And this happened to me quite a bit, where in the old days, the vulnerability would show up later on down the pipeline, right? The security team says, okay, we're just going to update that dependency, and it broke my code, right? It broke the whole project, the whole release, because of the breaking changes.
Yeah. This is just, I mean, the amount of complexity in all these systems and all these different versions of all these systems is really mind blowing. I don't think people fully appreciate. I don't think non-technical people fully appreciate. Every time I talk to you guys, a lot of times when I talk to Java developers, security is always, top of mind. I used to work at Sun on the Solaris project. Security is always, top of mind. So I'm sort of used to hearing about it a lot, right? Lots of testing, lots of security. There's just an awareness there. And one of the things that people have always told me is that there's just really a truly mind-numbing number of things that can break software. Different versions in these programs are obviously very, very large, and we've got now thousands and thousands of services, all have to talk to each other, and everything just works out well, right?
Yeah. So I think, right. Well, it's software, right? We're always changing it because we have different demands, and they evolve into different things, right? Like the way we do business. So, right. For me, it's like a love-hate relationship, like I love writing software and getting it to work and getting it to a stable place, but I hate knowing the fact that in 6 months, I'm going to have to rewrite some of that, right? I'm going to have to retouch this and so, right. It's like you do your masterpiece, and then, but all the while knowing that this ain't over, right? This isn't it. You can't frame it. You can frame it for about 6 months and then, or whatever, right? What a limited time period, and then you have to go back and and touch up your masterpiece, right? So
Do you
often,
think
like you touch it up, or maybe you're creating a whole new masterpiece based off of this whole thing. So yeah, it's like it's hard, but it's fun.
so? Do you think, in terms of development, the mindset has changed in recent years in terms of how you develop code? I mean, the tools have obviously changed. The situation has changed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're not. This isn't 30 years ago, but so I'm not asking that sort of question. I'm asking about the
No, yeah.
mindset of how you sit down and think about writing code, structuring code, um,
I
as opposed
think
to when
that
you were younger.
yeah, for sure. Like when I started, we were under like the waterfall software methodology where everything is kind of dependent on each other and it created a lot of blocks, right? So like if I'm working, you and I are working on a team and you had a project or some tasks in the project that maybe some of the stuff I'm doing overlapped with your code, right? So that means we're touching the same code. Yeah, I would have to wait for Jim to finish, you to finish your bits, right? And that could take what, anywhere from a month to, I'm just throwing
Yeah.
numbers out there, but it could be
Yeah.
anywhere from hours to a month, right? Or years even. And then I can go in and say, all right, let me play with let me make my change. So that's why software used to take so much longer to produce back in the day, right? Like some operating system updates were like a year, 2 years, 3 years, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you work at Oracle, right? Like I don't know how long you've been there, but anyway, it was a long time, right? We're waiting for things for a very long time. Now, with the emphasis of, like agile software methodology, right? Like software development methodologies, which requires you to kind of do multiple things at the same time, right? Right. You're just obviously gaining efficiency because things are being done at the same time. There's no longer, you're trying to eliminate the blocks, is what I'm saying, like all these blocking dependencies. So yes, we have evolved into a way faster, like software releases, like changes are being released like multiple times a day in some of these big organizations. Sometimes thousands of times a day, right? Wow. Thousands of releases are being done automatedly. So literally, I write some code and 20 minutes later, it could be sitting in production, right? Like run through an automated pipeline. And that's where like we're getting smarter. We're getting smarter about how to use automation to, help us release our code faster. And that's what we're all about at Circle CI, is providing a platform, right, for people to be able to do that on. But I will say, having the tool doesn't necessarily mean you are an efficient, right? You're efficient at building software, because again, like I mentioned, like DevOps, DevSecOps, all these continuous delivery, continuous integration, these are all practices and principles that must be adopted and implemented, right, as a more of a culture, at a cultural level, right? So the concepts around those are more about managing the individuals on your teams, their skills, their personalities,
so human,
how they, the human aspect, right? So it's just like in the military, right? If you have a few individuals that are not up to snuff on your team, they're more than likely going to bring you down. And in certain situations in the military, they can get you killed, right? So you have to address that. You have to either, get them to where the rest of your team are, or you got to transfer them out, do something, right? Like you can't sustain that. So it's the same kind of, in my mind, same kind of concept. Which obviously, right, you're dealing with humans now, not machines. So every team, every organization, right, has implements and adopts these practices in different ways. Right. So there's no like gold standard. Now there are some common patterns and practices that maybe can apply across, right? But once you start drilling into the because this is really communicative and collaborative like it's heavy on communication and collaboration, right? So those concepts vary dramatically right, between teams. So yeah, so you got to tackle some of that human stuff, but all the while, once you get that kind of, you get a good read on that, and you got a functional team, then you can start evolving. And I think the biggest aspect to that is, how do you convince someone that, as a whole, right? How do you convince individuals that working together is more efficient than, just doing your own thing?
Right.
And I don't think,
that brings up, you really bring up a good point about the human aspect here, and also working collaboratively. I mean, you're going to be talking at Jfokus, which is the big Java conference, a big open source conference.
Right.
Developers work by and large in groups and teams. You develop software together. It's just not the case in all fields, as I keep saying.
Right.
And so, what's your experiences working with the community, working in teams like this?
Yeah. So, I've contributed to some open source projects. Everything that I write, I don't write as much production code these days because I'm a developer advocate. So my role is to engage the community, understand how technology is being used. I have huge ties into the open source community because of this, right? Actually, as a developer in today's society, in today's computing world, I guess, we're all
right
deeply tied to open source, right? Whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not, we're using this I guess publicly available code in our projects. So yeah, my ties are I'm a big proponent of mentoring, because when I was coming up in this business, open source wasn't as readily available or huge, just it wasn't as huge as it is today, as popular as it is today. And having that still, even though you have all this software, you still need people to kind of show you, right, the benefits of whatever open source project or software you're doing. If you're a Java developer, it can get quite hairy. Just understanding, right, the Java ecosystem. There's so many ways to do things, right? There's so many frameworks, there's so many libraries, and picking the right one is really difficult. So, if I have any experience in any of that, and someone, reaches out to me on Twitter, I'm really big on communicating on Twitter. I think it's a great platform for that.
Yeah.
You can just call somebody out and ask them something. So if you're having issues with, like, do I go with a Spring framework, or am I going to use what's the other one? I think it's called Spring. The other one I want to talk about is it Dragon? I believe it's been a minute, but so there's all these different frameworks. Is my point, and picking the right one, right, at whatever given time you're writing software.
Right.
It can be quite difficult to kind of zone in. I would say that my advice in that situation, if you're looking at different things for a project, I would say just make a decision and pick one, go with it. Because at the end of the day, like I said earlier, you're going to be touching that code again, right? Like at some point, whether it's, a year from now, 2 years from now, or in 3 months, you will be touching that code again. If it's something that, is critical to your business, you may get lucky and not have to touch that code. That has happened to me maybe like 5 times in my life, but it's very rare. But again, in the open source community, being a good mentor, and like people like me who have been around for a while, we should be, kind of advising the more newer folks, right, on some of these things. I think that's very helpful. It is very helpful for those folks. And it's also not only just for newer folks. There's also developers, or maybe they're Python developers for 20 years or whatever, 15 years, and now they got to jump on and do some Java or work
Yeah.
on in Java. So, right, there's not only, the newer junior developers, there's also the senior, more veteran developers that have to make transitions into new technologies. So,
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, that's one of the reasons I got involved in this business, is because it changes so quickly. So it provides opportunities to get in and retool yourself, and so, yeah, good point. All right, Angel. Well, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. This was a great conversation. Very interested in everything you have to say. Good luck with the session at Jfokus, and maybe we'll get to see you at a conference, a real conference, in terms of a physical event.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, once all this COVID business gets a little under control, I think we'll definitely have a coffee or a beer or whatever your beverage of choice is. But yeah, thank you, Jim, for having me, and it was a pleasure speaking with you as well.
Great, thanks a lot. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you.